Black revolutionaries, distillery owners, Italian fashion retailers, and Motown Grammy winners all share their best stories never before told in any other media outlets on Detroit is Different. Visit DetroitisDifferent.com or download the Detroit is Different app on Apple's App Store or Google's Play Store.
That's funny. Detroit is Different, back in full effect. Detroit is Different Studios, a guest that definitely has connected here. Somebody that is in the culture we love most, hip-hop culture. Mahogany, how you feeling?
Feeling really good.
All right,
Really
and good to have you in the mix.
Thank you.
In the city. You're here for a performance,
Yes.
but we're going to do the classic Detroit is Different because you've been on some other stuff connected to Detroit is Different, but this is the first time you're here. So, your Detroit story, what led for you to come to the D?
It's always a boy involved.
A man.
Always a man.
Oh, man.
No. In all honesty, so it was Sicily. I'm just joking. No, it was I think a year after I did this thing called 106 in Park, Freestyle Friday, my friend knew a producer that was having an event, and it was in Philly. And it was like all these women rappers doing their thing. She's like, you should come. So I went. I spit. I saw this woman spit, EP, the energy provider. And I was like, man, she's dope. She's really good. I was like, but her production is crazy. And I was just telling my producer, I was in New York at the time, I was just like, man, if Erykah Badu or if India Ari were to rap, that's what I want to sound like. I need soul in my music. And my producer was like, man, you talking crazy. I don't know what you're talking about. But when I heard Erykah spit, I was like, what is she spitting on? That's what I want. And so I talked to her and I was like, you're amazing. Who does your production? She's like, oh, my boyfriend, my soon-to-be fiance. I said, cool. So he said he saw me and I was like rare, in my full New York regalia being, a weirdo. And he was like, what's she about to do? What is she doing? She gonna be trash. But then he heard me and he was like, wow, she's dope. So we exchanged information. You know, you meet people and you're like, yeah, let's get up. We're going to make something happen. Nothing happens. That was the opposite. I was working at the school system in New York City at the time. And I want to say maybe we're like 2 months away from a break because, you get like those big breaks. So I think it was winter break. We talked. He said, hey, I live in Detroit. I stay at my dad's house, but I want to do some music. You can come through. I was like, bet I'm going to come through. I got break. He was like, great. He's like, I'm going to pay for your ticket. So come up. Let's get some work done. Wow. So he was working with who we now know and love, Zoe, who, does stuff with foreign exchange.
All types of stuff. Yeah.
All types of stuff. So he was working with Zoe. He was doing a few other things. He was working with a lot of people with the Athletic Mic League. And these are all people who I didn't known really, but I, loved the sound, loved the music. Come for a week, I love it. I'm like, this is amazing. We record like 5 songs.
So what was his connection to Philly if...
His wife was doing the show, or his now wife, and then fiance.
So the show just happened to be in Philly.
The show just happened to be in Philly.
Okay.
I was in Philly. She was in Philly, but he was in Philly. We all met, exchanged information. I lived in New York. He lived in Detroit. We said, let's keep in touch. Hey, let's record some music. So I come to Detroit, stay for a week, record 5 songs. He's like, yeah, let's run it again. I got a spring break. I'm coming back. So I come back. But when I come back this time, I meet his best friend. And so his best friend was the boy. Do more music. We do like 5 more songs. I meet Zoe. Zoe does a few tracks for me. Wow. We're all doing it. It's good stuff. So good that I'm like, man. And me as a New Yorker, I never envisioned living anywhere else. I was like, I'm always going to live in New York. But was like, nah, I'm coming back. I'm coming back for the summer.
Wow.
My friends throw a good, going away party for me in
Okay,
New
and one
York.
second. And this was like...
This is 2000. This is 2002.
So like Airbnbs and all of that.
No,
it wasn't like you could just go to Verbo.
No, this was me. His father had a house in Oak Park. So this is him and clearing it with his fiance. Like, hey, strictly business. My dad is gonna let her stay in our guest room. She gonna work on her album for the summer. Can she stay here in Detroit? And I stayed for the summer. Lost 20 pounds, almost finished the album, and left in a very serious relationship with his best friend. And then 2 years later, it was just like, man, like we're engaged. And so I'm going to come live in Detroit. And just, the engagement didn't work, but we've been rocking for a good, we had like, now my husband is my business partner, my music partner. He's my label head. But me and Ron Lee had done music together for about 17 years.
Okay, now, with that being said, let's go into some of these stories, because as Detroiters, we always wonder, what's the Detroit experience like for a person not from here? And especially at that time to leave New York and come here. And anybody that knows Mahogany definitely can tell that. You can tell that New York energy. But what was it like to come here just that summer? Because, I mean, the winter break is different.
We all know ain't nothing like a Detroit summer.
Mm-hmm.
So it was odd. I'll never forget. I was in Oak Park at the park. And my thing is I would run the track every day. And I remember having this overwhelming feeling of, I could live here. So that this is prior to me like getting in serious relationship with said dude or different things involving also what was happening at the time. So we all know now, we know him as Jason Wilson, but to me he was Magi and he was a producer. He had hooked up with Ron and was like, I'm starting this thing called The Union. And it's going to be for people who identify as Christians and they're rappers and they do music and they're serious and it's kind of like a label, but it's a collective. And yeah, Mahogany, she do her thing and you do her thing, you do your thing. Like, let's sync up, let's figure it out. So that had started as well. So while that was in the works, I was just like, this is where I need to be. This is where I belong. Like, I could live here.
And this is surprising because, we hear so much, so many Detroiters go to New York for creative and artistic opportunity. You were a New Yorker coming to Detroit for more the creative outlet, because I think a lot of Detroiters feel as though for the career and business to take off, I need to be in New York. But you were kind of saying, like, for me to tap into the creativity, I need to be in Detroit.
And it's true. And it's interesting too. So when I was in New York, when I first started, like just knowing I wanted to be an artist, I was about 18. I started going to places like the Brooklyn Moon and the Erykah Poets Cafe. But around the same time that Erykah Badu was frequenting the Brooklyn Moon, Most Def and Talib Kweli, Talib Kweli's mom had a spot called Nkiru Books. So we would do open mics there and they would have like meetups about like different like activism things that was popping off. And Jessica Care Moore and Saul Williams, they were all there. So it's like, as a young artist, I saw Jessica, and I was like, man, like, look at this idea that you can be an artist and use art as a tool to really create change in a real way. I saw Saul, I saw Ill. So I was at Wetlands and I was with my ex at the time, his name was Lifelong. And we was in line and I saw this really sweet, like just cool white girl. We just start kicking it, talking back and forth. She had pigtails and we're just talking and we're vibing. And at the time I'm doing more poetry. I'm not really rapping. And she's a spitter, which I didn't know until I saw her perform that night. And we formed a friendship. So when I had come to Detroit and I saw Ill, I was like, what are you doing here? She's like, I'm from here. I was like, what? Are you serious? Like, really? And then when I moved here, I saw Jessica was here. And I was like, what are you doing here? She's like, I'm from here. I was like, it makes sense.
All right. So coming just even that summer, what did you notice just the difference in culture of the people? What was the response,
New York creatives, there's a certain connectivity. We're all connected, I don't care. You can be on a train with people. You're going to bump into an artist that that's just going to happen. However, sometimes it could be smoke and mirrors. Like sometimes artists are legit and they are what they say they are. And then sometimes it's like, you're selling wolf tickets. You're not as dope as you say you are. And there's a lot of dope, serious artists in New York. Don't get me wrong. But when I came to Detroit, there was a certain sensibility of the way that artists approached their art and the craft that was blue collar. It really was a blue collar logic. It was like I'm here to get the work done. You can keep all the flash. You can keep all of that. The work is the work. The craft is the craft. The level is the level. Like, we really engage in the artistic process. And years later, decades later, you feel that. You see it. That's why now, maybe not musically. I mean, yes, musically, because you go anywhere, anybody's MD, somebody in the band going to be from Detroit, right? But the visual artists, you see the level of visual art that's coming from here. And it really is something in the soil, it's something in the air, something in the water that, the art, it's bar none. I've never, other than maybe the Bay, I don't think there's a space that has more integrity when it comes to how we create.
I consider like Chicago like our sibling city.
Yes, me too.
And I consider the Bay like our twin city.
Yes.
Like it's like
our,
you know what I'm saying? Like the left, the right, you know, they funk, they blue collar.
Yes,
You know, a lot of the shipping, the port ways, like it's, you know, it's a lot of Black revolutionary work there.
Yes,
and
I never thought about that.
And a lot of Black street history still. You know what I'm saying? Like it's and then church movement, Muslim, like it's a lot of parallels between the Bay and Detroit.
Yeah.
You know, but Chicago, like I say, that's like
it's
the
true.
sibling.
They
it's like y'all different, but we fam. But y'all are different. Detroit is different, but Chicago is for
different.
Different. You know, like, what is these Chicago people doing here? You know,
that's true.
Be like, boy, they done turned everything into a house. You know, like them Chicago DJs. You know,
for real, they gonna do some footwork. It is different. The slang is different. It's way different. I agree.
So with that being said, so the engagements brings you here.
Yeah.
But also, I'm guessing the creativity too.
Oh, yeah.
So when you move, you change careers. How does your family respond to like, yo, I'm about to move to Detroit from New York? Like, what is the response?
And it was major. I mean, I owned property in New York at the time, so I owned a condo, sold my condo. I'm coming to Detroit. All my friends are like,
what
in
borough?
Brooklyn.
Oh, so where at in like
Prospect Park.
So if you'd have kept that, you would be like,
oh
you'd be
yeah,
like,
a millionaire. Yeah, a millionaire. Foolish, all kinds of. I mean, and when I sold it for 6 times, and I purchased it. But when this was maybe I had been in Detroit for about 5 years, and my friend had owned a space, and she's like, "Yo, guess what, Mo?" I said, "What?" She's like, "I found out your spot. Somebody had your spot, sold your spot. Guess how much it sold for?" I was like, "What? $500,000." I was like, "Oh, I was sick. But it was worth it. It was totally worth it. I mean, I don't know. It's just, it was worth it. I don't think, I mean, I definitely, you know, New York, you know, I don't know. Yeah. It's like, I feel like Detroit really raised me as an artist.
That was what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So coming here, and these are always the inquisitive questions I have, because it's always like, how do other people, you know what I'm saying? It's like meeting, you know, Detroit is like a family member, especially on Detroit is different. So it's like, you know, how did this person, you know, kick it with my mom? You know what I'm saying? Like meeting your mom's best friend from high school or something. Like, what was she doing? So when you come here, what's the career? Do you go back into education?
So that was really interesting for me too. I had, you know, me and God have a very interesting relationship, and God was like, yo, you need to substitute teach, and you need to focus on music. And I had just gotten my degree, so in my mind, I'm like, how that gonna work? I know I got this house money from selling the spot, but I want some bread. So I was like, I don't know about that. So I go into advertising. AT&T, the worst, most miserable 3 years of my life. I'm still doing music, like heavy. Like I think within the 2-year span that I had been in Detroit, I had put out 2 mixtapes. And by year 3, I was working on my first full album. And I had done tons of features. So I was working on music heavily, but I just happened to be, you know, white collar, working in advertising and hating it. Like we had a gym in our building, and we had a sauna room. And I can recall at least being in the sauna room crying, like at least once a month. Like I hated that job so much.
Wow. What made you dislike it so much?
I just knew it wasn't me. Like, I don't want to sell anybody anything. I think even with my music, I think maybe that's the issue too. It's like, I don't want to have to sell you nothing. Like, if you want it, you want it. If I have something to offer you, great. If you don't,
Mm.
and it's like, if you see the value, then go ahead and let me assist you in giving you value. But like, now I have to like drum up this thing that that I don't necessarily believe in. And it's not really fulfilling or rewarding. This is not it. And then it led me back to what was it, which was education and teaching. And when I yielded to let me start doing what I knew I was supposed to do, which was substituting, that opened up doors. So substituting opened up a door for me to go teach full-time English at Westside Christian Academy, which was crazy, but it was the best experience. That opened up another door for me to start doing some arts education work, which I didn't even know I would have the opportunity to do. And I was on the east side, and I started teaching hip-hop classes. And when I did that, I had somehow just kind of been in the mix. Years had been passing by. I'm still, doing my thing. And then I got in contact with someone from Inside Out. And then I started heavily tapping into like, oh, I get to teach poetry. Like, oh, I get to really tap into my craft, and I get to teach like emceeing. Like, oh no, this is almost a thing as much as doing music is a thing. Like teaching music and teaching just different life skills. And I'm doing things with the union. So with the union, we're teaching like arts education, but it's mixed with life skills. And just kind of, it was also here that I really walked into purpose. Like, oh no, this is what you're supposed to be doing with your life.
So a lot of questions connected to that. The first one I got is, you said you basically like 3 projects in about two years.
Yeah.
What type of like productivity were you having in New York as far as like creatively? Like, were you that aggressive there? Were you more aggressive here?
I think now one thing I will have to say is me being from New York definitely gave me a certain pace that a lot of times is unmatched. And I know you can attest to Piper. It's like our rhythm of how things are supposed to happen is we're pretty relentless. And so New York had given me that. Now, as far as emceeing and projects, I was doing more poetry. I mean, I guess just to give you a timeline, I was a whack poet as a teenager. When I started work, I was interning at Universal, and I met a real poet, and she's like, yeah, you trash. You need to come to Brooklyn Moon. Here's some real poets. You need to start reading. You're going to get better. So that was 18, my first year of college. By 19, I was touring. Like I was like on the road touring as a spoken word artist. So that by the time 20 had come, and I decided like, man, I like doing spoken word, but I want to MC for real. Like I'm just being scary. And then it was like 106 in Park. So I think I've always had this sense of when my mind is set, that's what we doing.
That's what's up.
You know what I'm saying? But as far as like putting out projects, nah.
Now also, I like that you just set me up for my next question. For creatives, because as much as we explore Detroit, we also explore passion here with Detroit is Different, just going in a person's life journey. Do you think that being in that advertising position, you were dealing with something you didn't really want to deal with? Do you think as an artist, did that inspire some different creativity from you? Did you pour a little bit more into the studio and writing and focus creatively at that time? Because, I mean, the reason I ask this is I've heard this discussion point from a producer that did some stuff with Stevie Wonder one time, said, like, sometimes the best times to make music and be creative are at the times of the most chaos or the times of the most peace. But I was like, that's interesting to be like just these polar opposites. So do you think that impacted your creativity? If it did, how did it? And, not saying you want to go back through like those types of stressors, but, what impact did that have on your art?
Definitely. I think you don't realize it at the time, but it does light a certain kind of fire under you. And it's interesting that you say that too, because I think when I got into more of a comfortable space, right, where I was able to do what I felt fit me, I was able to do more arts education. I felt myself feeling like, dang, like I'm becoming like the fat, sloppy coach.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Where it's like, I know this craft, I get to share and teach the craft, but am I engaging and really being a part of the craft? Like, I'm teaching others, that's cool, but like, am I doing it as heavily? Whereas when I didn't have that outlet, and it's like, man, I have this thing I love, I'm trying to get to. I was trying to get to it furiously. So yeah, that's true.
All right. So as that time goes on, you get to this more comfortable space.
Yeah.
You add in the arts education, and this is around the time I think we're crossing paths.
Yeah.
And we're crystallizing.
Yeah.
So if people don't know, as a
Yeah.
lot of people don't know, I don't rap as much anymore.
He
at
a
all,
beast.
really.
He a
But yeah,
beast.
I put some words together.
Ah,
from time to
he
time.
gonna do it, man. He is a beast though.
It's many of us. And you mentioned Jason too. I know Chaos and Maestro. Like
Yes.
hip hop for me gave a lot of confidence. I learned a lot of lessons. I recently interviewed Soup, but I always look at like the things I've learned from people like Soup and others. You know what I'm saying? Rest in peace, Proof and Khan and so many people. What do you think hip hop gave you as you started to transition into the like? In what ways did you start applying what you learned from hip hop into the education, so forth and so on? You know.
I mean, I think the biggest thing that hip hop gave me was like just the element of like knowledge of self, like figuring out like what self-awareness is and really still on that journey and wanting to give that to other people, like that being really important. I think it also just gave me just the ingenuity of like feeling or vibing. You know what I'm saying? It's like you have to know when the room shifts. You know, you're instructing. You gotta know when it's shift. You know what I'm saying? You're in a certain position in your life. You gotta feel it. Like, you ever been in a cipher and you can feel when that person's about to fall off, and then you jump in. And then you feel when you're about to fall off, and then you know what I'm saying? Like, you make certain adjustments. And I think that is a great skill to be able to improv, but to also the feeling, the being intuitive and knowing when it's time to pivot. And I think that has been essential for me just in life in general. It's like you have to be very aware. You have to be self-aware, and then you also have to be aware of like what's around you, who's around you, what's happening, where are they at, what's your give and take? You know what I mean? So whether it's with other adults, whether it's with students, it's just like, okay, are you being mindful enough to be aware of your surroundings and where you need to ebb and flow, give and take, turn, stop, go? You know what I mean? So I think that's one of the most crucial lessons that hip hop has taught me and is still teaching me.
All right. So now let's get into some of that music that you were creating while you were here. What were some of the projects? What was the response you were getting? What did you like about it? What were you getting out creatively at that time?
So the first project that I got out was this thing called The Gathering. Super, super militant. All the beats was hard. Like, you know, when mixtapes was a thing, you just jack out the beats. Everything was like raw. You know, all the MCs was raw. It was a really good a really good response. But when I started to tap into more of what I wanted to do, and I did a lot of projects with the union, so a lot of things that Maestro or Magi produced or Jason Wilson produced, and it was. But that's, again, I came here with what? If India Ari rapped, if Jill Scott rapped, if, you know, I want that. So when I started to tap into that and I did my own project, it was definitely ahead of its time. People were like, this is different. And I was kind of like, okay, that's fine. It's okay. It's cool. But then my next project, I did something called Pure, and it was what also sparked the catalyst for me really being able to merge like my heart and my art. And so Pure is what, when I did Denim Day, you know, and I led Denim Day, which was basically like efforts to speak out against like sexual like violence, and you know, when we raised money for the rape kits, and when I had done I had something called Pure Purple, so it was like every October I'd partner with Piper and other people in the community, and we do things for like domestic violence awareness. That came from the album Pure, and it basically, you know, I got this idea, and I was frustrated with being pegged as being a woman MC. Wherever I would go, like that was the peg. It was like, and I was mad at that, almost to the point where I think content-wise, I tried to go into like an androgynous space. It's like none of my content dealt with things that dealt with women, because it's like I'm tired of that being the focus, as opposed to like, I'm spitting these bars. Like, can't that just be respected? And then just God dropped it on my heart. Like, you need to do a project about women, for women. But you can't do that without men. So men need to be involved in the compilation. Women, other women's voices need to be involved. But you need to really address things that for women are pushed under the rug. And I was like, no, I'm tired of being pegged for just being a girl rapper. Like, now I'm about to rap about some girl stuff. That's trash. And the guy was like, no, you're going to do it. And I said, okay, we're going to do it. But it was bigger than the music. It was like, no, like the music was cool. The songs were cool. But the conversations that needed to be had around the songs wound up being just bigger than me. And so I'm really grateful for that project. And then it was Sugar Water. And Sugar Water, you know, for me, I was like, man, it's like about the soul, you know, and the soul of Detroit, but it's also about just like my soul. And, you know, we were going through so much at the time. Police brutality was at its most visible. I won't say its highest, right? Because I'm sure it's been high for a minute, right? But it was very visible now. We had cell phones and camera phones. We were just going through a lot, and I was going through a lot. I think having the gift to Piper and Sakari being open enough to like allow me to see a need and step up to the occasion to host the foundation and host in that capacity, but me also having like these really like sharp views as a Christian, and now being in these different spaces really was just a gift to me, because it just helped me broaden my perspective, and it also had me really challenge certain things in not my faith. Like I definitely believe in Christ, but the way that America and American Christianity had approached handling certain things, and definitely handling, you know, just our community, people of color, and the conversations that could be had and couldn't be had in the Christian faith. And so, yeah, I was just really grateful to get to do Sugar Water, because I feel like I got a chance to deal with, you know, what for me was like the soul music that I loved, that drew me to Detroit, but also what was the soul of myself and the soul of our country. And so to me, that was being in Detroit. I would love, I think all three projects are really special to me, but definitely Sugar Water is really important to me.
I think it's my favorite project, like classic. Yeah. Now, I have this question. You said heart and art. You brought that, and then there's a couple other points I want to come back to, but what does marrying heart with art, like, what does that mean?
That is bigger than music, you know, that it's what drew me to want to be an artist. You know, it's like, okay, I went to college for communications. I didn't know what I wanted to communicate, how I wanted to communicate. I knew I wanted to communicate. I knew I wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to do something. I knew something had to be done. And I felt like if I was going to make music, but I couldn't really address things that needed to be addressed, or if it wasn't really going to like help the souls of people or help people have a different perspective in a way that would like enrich their lives, then how meaningless is that? Like how, and no disrespect to artists who make music, because music makes you feel good. Music makes you feel. And I need a moment to be ratchet. I need to turn up. Like I need that. I need it for myself. But is that all that I need? Nah, you know, I wanted to make something that would create feelers and thinkers. You know what I'm saying? So I think heart and art means like I want to make music that makes a difference, and then I also want to figure out ways I can make a difference. And I want to be able to have those spaces share, and I want to collaborate with people and organizations that like want to do that.
And you also spoke on not wanting to be labeled as the woman MC. And we spoke a little bit about this before we started recording. As I said, like, you know, it's such a boom. Like when I think of popular hip hop right now, the leading MCs are all women for the most part. Like the machine is like putting more effort and energy behind women MCs. The interesting part of it though is, as a man looking at this, it's like and I guess this could be looked at just period, even with the men MC. Like, the message does not seem like a message. It seems like the message, women rapping what men will want women to hear, right?
Yeah.
And I spoke to that.
Yeah.
And just that pressure. What is it? What's the feel of that woman MC? As I know, I've said, like, yeah, she can rap and everything, instead of just saying, you know, dope rapper. You know what I'm saying? Like, that woman MC, what carries with that label? What do you hear when you hear that? How does it feel? Like, why was that something that it's like, don't try to put me in that song?
So when I first started, and I think that has been the delay in any kind of progression, is I was very concerned with, she can rap. Cannabis can rap. We ain't got no classic Cannabis albums, though. Right? I was consumed with, oh, she can rap. As opposed to, no, like, do you hear what I'm saying? And I think women go without being heard. And I think that hip hop, if we're honest, you know, got so much appeal because it became the rock and roll. It became the reckless for our generation, right? It became this is a space where you get to just do whatever the fuck you want to do, however you want to do it. Like, this is it, right? And a lot of that was male dominated.
Very much so.
You know, and there's nothing that's, and I hate to do this, right? But I have to do it. There's the WNBA. We appreciate the WNBA. We love
the NBA.
The NBA. We love to watch men play basketball. You know, we love to. I don't know if I would want to watch women play football, but I love to watch men play football, right? So that there's a certain respect that has to be given to this genre of music where the black male voice gets to be prominent. There's a certain respect that has to be given to that. And it is. And it's appreciated because there is this fearlessness. There is this like, rah, there is this like, I'm here and I'm not going nowhere that we all plug into when we need that feeling. That I think as women, you do one or two things, right? So as a woman, you are forced to acquiesce to, okay, how can I appeal to this man? Oh, I appeal to him sexually. Or how can I become this man? Right? It's a very, and two, it's like, okay, men aren't known for like getting with their homeboys and having deep conversations, right? Men aren't known for getting with their homeboys and going through these deep feelings. It's like, because, okay, men are wired a certain way. And not that that's naturally, and also we have our social constructs, you know, have not been the best, right? So there's certain extremes of that are unhealthy. And now I guess we would call it, you know, male, you know, being, you know, masculine toxicity, whatever. You know what I'm saying? But women, it's like, it's hard because it's like, man, women, we are feelers. We are emotional. We do have things we want to talk about. And maybe we're going to talk about some things that as men, you don't want to hear, or it's too difficult for you to hear, or you listen to music because you want to escape. So sometimes as a woman, or being truly feminine in this very masculine space, can, you know, to men feel like, okay, I'm watching the WNBA. It's cool, but, you know, so I feel like our culture has to, in order for there to be really a space for someone like me, someone like a Asar Rock, someone like a Book Brown, someone like a Rhapsody, more no names. Our culture it's something about our culture as a whole that has to be able to sustain respecting each other's voices.
That's deep. I appreciate the whole way you broke that down, because it was always a question just from, you know, the naivete that I have as a man, just knowing I go through things biased. So in my mind, because, you know, like not communications, but marketing, I do know a lot of this stuff is conditioning. It's socialized. So hence it's in me. Like, I understand, like, when I say, like, look, all white people are racist. All men are sexist. I'm a man. I'm sexist because I've tapped
That's
into,
how we've been socialized.
the conditioning. And it doesn't dismiss, like, being, like, misogynistic or cruel or rude, but it also is from some of the considerations of, like, oh, she's a woman, so I'm going to do this consideration for her, versus if that was a man, he on his damn own. So it's certain things, but just that whole concept of being heard, that definitely, it connected well, and that was pivotal. So it makes me think of my journey in, as much as I love hip hop, in the women MCs that is like, that I just have in my mix, in my rotation, because most of my playlists, I love Light. You know what I'm saying?
We all love Light. Light was why I wanted to rap.
Gray.
Love Jean
I
Grey.
love you know, and I'm speaking more national acts now. You know, definitely some stuff, like, I like Kim's voice, her presence on the mic. Like, but when I think of most, it's going to become a wider lens because those connections. But then sometimes a song does break through where it's like, you can do it in a certain way. And I thought Queen Latifah did that in a real cool way, where it's like, this is a different lens. I don't, a bunch of dudes probably not going to be banging UNITY in the Jeep, but when they hear it, they hear the message and they get the understanding, and the premise of how this was spit was almost from a lens of, like, wow, it's like she's picking up the verse from what Pac was speaking to this woman, and keep your head up. But she's actually rapping as this
Get
woman.
out of my head. That's exactly who I thought about. When you said UNITY, I was like, man, that reminds me of when Pac would do, like, songs.
Keep your head up. Yeah. And even, like, when I think of, like, I think Eve did it. Yeah,
she did it well.
Like, when I think of, when I first saw, that was the first thing, when I first saw you spitting, I'm like, this reminds me of Eve, in the sense of, like, so much like my fly women that like my cousins that was fly when I was younger, but she can rap, but she you know what I'm saying, like,
it's still feminine.
It was a different lens of seeing, but I'm like, okay, and that's why because I know, and I mean, I've done it before, you're also one of the few women that actually headlines a lot of shows where you're on too. And how do you navigate that?
I'm now, for a long time, again, I think I fought so long because only people saw that I was a woman, and people would see me and think, oh, she's going to sing, or are you going to do poetry? And it's like, no, I'm going to rap. So it's like I was always put in this pace where I had to prove myself. And it's like a decade of that, of every time you show up, it's always you're starting at point one, is daunting. And I had to come to the place where it's like, I want to be like my male counterparts. They come to rock, and guess what they're going to do? Have fun, have a good time, do what they do, and do it well. And I'm sure they're a little nervous, but they're coming and they know they're going to be heard and respected on site. And it's like, you have to just put away whatever is happening for other people when they see you. And you just have to show up and be heard, and then you'll be seen. But just be heard, and don't fight to have to be heard, but just be. And it'll come, it'll happen, and they'll be all right. They're gonna come along. They're gonna be okay.
That's what's up. Denim Day. What's Denim Day?
So Denim Day happens nationally. It is a day that happened. A young woman who was 16. In Paris. She was with her driving instructor, and the driving instructor was like, hey, pull over here. She's like, okay, being young, naive. He proceeds to rape her. Her parents are enraged. They take it to court. She's brave, wins. Then appeals it, and the argument is that her jeans were too tight. So it couldn't have been rape because she had to assist him in taking them down. The whole court was outraged. So, it's like England, and they all have to wear the stuff. So as opposed to coming in their robes, they all came in jeans. And it's something that went from just being, international to national. It happens in April, and it's basically just a day where we stand with sexual survivors, and we let them know that, you know, we believe you, we support you. And so we wear jeans, we raise money, like people at like places of employment, they get to wear jeans, but you have to pay to wear jeans, and then the money goes to different organizations that protect women in different vulnerable positions. So it could be women who are experiencing sex trafficking, or you know, survivors who are trying to piece their life back together, organizations like the Sasha Center here in the city. And so yeah, and so for us, Detroit Denim Day, which we passed over when I moved, I passed over to the Sasha Center, is an opportunity to do that. So we used it to have speakers, to have panel discussions, to raise money, and each time we had a huge about 11,000 rape kits that had gone untested. And so for about 5 years, we used Detroit Denim Day to assist in raising money until it was no more and all the rape kits were able to be processed.
When did you start this? What response did you get to this? And then, like, what was your because this is the other thing as an artist, because an artist is a business. And like I say, business, when you're in business, you have other stakeholders, and those other stakeholders are like your family, your friends, the other people in your corner, even musically. What was the response of your team starting this? When did you start it, and what was the response of the community?
I started it when we came out with Pure, and my best friend, Jane Marie, at the time, you know, she challenged me, and I personally have never experienced that, but she is a survivor. And I had so many people who were survivors, and unfortunately, being a part of the Christian faith, I had friends who had either been molested or things had happened to them. And I had friends that I was really close with, and I would be in their lives, but I, because of what had happened to them, would almost feel awkward being around their young children, because I know they would fear that something like that would happen. So I just know it affected me really personally. And I was like, yo, we got to do something about it. And it was around the same time Kim Worthy let the city know, like, hey, we have 11,000 rape kits untested. And so my friend Jane challenged me. She's like, we need to reach out to the national board, and we want to do a day, and we need to be a part of it. So she really started it, but then she moved to California about our second Denim Day event. She was no longer, and I said, well, we still have to do it. It's not done. And at the time I was, you know, hosting the foundation and working with Piper, and my community was super supportive, and they just was like, yeah, this is something that needs to be done. And it put people in uncomfortable positions. I think people were forced to really, you know, we didn't just have these events and be like, hey, come look cute and give you money. Like, we had some real conversations all the way around, from the legal aspects, to the victims or survivors aspects. So these were really uncomfortable conversations, to figuring out, like, okay, if you were a perpetrator, where's the space for grace? Where's the space for redemption? Where's the space for, you know, healing? And, you know, can you turn from this? So yeah, I mean, the response was for sure favorable, but the response was also very confronting, I think.
So in doing that, tapping into like that, now you're definitely getting into a whole nother space when I think of, like, you know, the engagement and the connection you're going to have with the audience. How did that impact your audience? How did that impact, like, the way people kind of reaching out to you now? Because this moves you in, like, definitely a space and a place where you're really a representative. You're speaking on behalf of others, and yeah, that just comes with more weight, I'm assuming.
It did. I mean, especially, I mean, the Denim Day was a thing, but the Pure Purple, where we dealt with domestic violence, now that was personal to me. My mother had been a victim of domestic violence, and that got real, because that was like straight in the trenches. Like, I would get a few Facebook messages. We would try to put our heads together to figure out how to get women placed in different situations if they were in abusive situations. I had people reach out to me, and then it gets sticky. It gets sticky too, because now we're in the hip hop space, and now I actually have peers who may have been victimizers, right, who may have been involved in domestic violence and perpetrated domestic violence. And so now I'm being called to hold my peers accountable, or if I can't face to face hold them accountable, to go alongside, the victims, and to, that's always a slippery slope, right? So I mean, there was definitely some moments where it just got real. It's like, man, let's figure it out. I mean, I can count on my hand where it's like, okay, we involved, we in it, like we taking you here. But yeah, it was. It's a space. I mean, I still keep in contact with some of the people, especially like not necessarily connected to like Denim Day and like survivors of rape, but definitely I still get people keep in touch with me who were in domestic situations.
And for a lot of people that don't know, there are many resources, but many more are needed just because it's very prevalent throughout communities, and it impacts on so many levels. Like when we even think of the amount of women that experience homelessness just due to leaving an abusive situation, or the women that feel as though, okay, I will experience homelessness, so they're almost like in this oppressive situation for a place to stay. Possibly the kids are there, like, and then the more that, marriage, kid, it just can weigh, and then you want to support, but you can really, the support.
You can do but so much if you don't have the resources. And, it's wild. I have a friend who was in a situation, and New York is built in a certain way. Like, she literally right now, she like, bet. She like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to move. I'm going to go in the shelter. They going to get me housing. It's going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to be with my kid, but it's going to be uncomfortable for about 2 months. But I'm going to be in a place, because that's what happened last time. So the resources there are like boom, 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 boom. Whereas when you're in other cities where financially resources are strained, you might have to figure out how you're going to ride that out, sis. Because, now you do have to think about the well-being and the welfare of your children, especially when you're in a place where, okay, weather's not favorable. So it's like, where are you going to go with your kids in the cold with no money? So how will you get food? Like, all of those moving parts, like transportation. It's like we don't have a great transportation system or a reliable transportation system. So it's like, how will you then, making this move, figure out how you're going to get to work? And then how are your kids going to get to school? And then, well, how are you going to have a car if it's one car in the household? Or, so it does get heavy. It does get overwhelming. It can feel impossible.
And this is to me why I love hip hop culture so much, because it can be that serious and that traumatic, and then you could hit that turn, and then it can still turn up. So like, also now, what impact does that have on your music and taking people through these variances of experience? Because it'll get real, then we can party, then we can laugh together. Then we can talk about what's coming up next. Then we can talk about back in the day. And
So that's cool. So I think that's what's funny. I think I went through like this phase, right, of like, dropping these very weighty projects. It's like, okay, Morph is about like my spiritual metamorphosis. And so the album, though it's fun, it's very serious because I'm dealing with like my own spiritual awakening, and I'm taking you through that journey. So it's an album. It's like a Lupe album. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to have a few joints you can sit and listen to, but you got to pay attention. It's like a Kendrick album. You got to listen, right? And sometimes people don't want to do that.
And that's kind of, it's so funny you brought up Kendrick, because I have this discussion, like, I respect him as, so
right, but I'm not trying to turn it on the vibe, right?
I'm going to take it. All my MC friends love Kendrick. And I will say, the tough thing about Kendrick, for me at least, as a hip-hop user, like, I have to want to listen to Kendrick Lamar. To listen to Kendrick Lamar. To me, my favorite rappers are rappers that I can just put
tune out. You could just put in the mix.
In the mix. Like, Kendrick's newest project, it's like, it's some dope stuff on here, but I have not felt the urge to go back
and listen.
And I'm not even a Drake fan, but even as
I could sit and listen to Drake mindlessly.
Caribbean, whatever that house thing he just did. It's like, okay, this can just be in the play mix a little bit more. Because I'm not drawn to like have to want to like You know what I'm saying?
Yes. So it's it's cool, right? So Morph comes out, you gotta sit and listen to it. Pure comes out, you definitely gotta sit and listen to it. It's got a whole movement. It's a thing. It's like women's suffrage. We figuring it out. Sugar Water comes out, and and all that happened with Pure, I think, brought me to Sugar Water, right?
Yeah.
I was like, man, we are sick. We need to drink water. We need something, but it has to be palatable. What's the best of that? How do we do that? And even, I think Sugar Water is still a pretty weighty project. So it brings me to this project now, Better. And I think I'm really pleased with this particular album because though sonically I'm like, man, it still need a little bit more soul, but it still has those elements in it. It's like half, I'm gonna make you gotta think, you gotta listen. But the other half, turn it on and just vibe.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm happy because we need that. And I realized too, as a person who takes in music, that I needed that. I had given myself permission to take in more music that's just, I just need a vibe. I need to turn up. I just need a minute. Like, I just need to escape.
And that's where, like, I mean, going back to like when people say like, man, it's been so many times people will be like, I can't believe you the person that listen to Pac. It's like, I love Pac because, and people will say he's so hypocritical. And I'm like, but those are the layers
of our humanity,
of life. You know, it is keep your head up and then wonder why they called you bitch.
Right.
And, how do you want it? And Dear Mama, like, life is not in a vacuum of like, as much as I sometimes will listen to like some artists that make music very similar to, like here we go, like every Pusha T song is going to be talking about selling crack.
Right.
So it's to a point where it's like, if I ever feel I want to listen to that, and it's like, okay, it's some talent in there, but it's like, it's a zone where I know I can get different experiences, hence tapping more into like Nipsey's catalog.
Yeah.
And others. I mean, your catalog, we mentioned J. Cole, and there's a lot of people that'd be like, I don't really like, but Jay raps
he'll give you a well-rounded experience. I could put on a J. Cole album and just let it run and not think about it. Yeah.
And I feel like he's just a regular dude processing life experience. Mm-hmm. Whereas, sometimes like the caricature becomes too much. Yeah. Now you've also, in this time, like I'll go on social media, I look up and I'm like, okay, she traveling the world. She like rapping in Indonesia and South Africa. she in Malaysia, kicking it. We're bringing different artists with her on these journeys too. Yeah. What got you traveling internationally with this hip hop?
So, I had, again, New York super influential in showing me how to bridge art and activism. Met a woman, Toni Blackman, and she was like the first hip hop ambassador. So the jazz ambassadors was like a thing, right? So in the midst of like Russia being beefed out with the U.S. offers the gift of jazz. So they send Dizzy Gillespie and, they send some of our great jazz artists to Russia. And that's where the whole idea of like, this goodwill ambassadorship, this is a thing, right? So she tell me about the program. She kind of loose about it. I go see her. It's like September. She like, I'm about to be a judge for this thing. I think you should apply. You got to get a band. She real loose with it. I'm like, sounds like a good idea. No problem. I can be bubbles and butterflies. It's December. She hit me up like, so the deadline January. How about you get a band together and you apply for this thing? And this is 2012. And I'm like, I don't have a band. I don't have a DJ. I don't know. We gonna figure it out. So we figure it out. I get some people. I get my peoples here. Wop. Apply. My workshop engages them. The band, my singer was not singing. Somebody else in my band was just not doing what they needed to do. And they're like, look, your band is a circus. We like you. Get it together. But we're going to give you 5 cities in Africa.
Wow.
And you're in, but get your band together because this is a mess.
Okay.
So I did that, and
did you have like the MC? Because sometimes that rapper disposition is you don't know what a good band is anyway. You don't know
I did
hip-hop.
not. I knew it was a hot mess. I was devastated.
You knew yourself.
I knew we were a mess. It was a mess.
You was like James Brown, like, ugh.
Right.
So basically, James Brown would like be docking people's pay, like he go dance over in front of somebody, like, and then it's like, oh damn, it's $20, $40, $60, $80, you know.
Right. And it was that, and I knew. So we got it together, but that just opened the door. And for me, at first, I'm not gonna lie, I'm like, ooh, great, I get to go to Africa for free. Awesome. But the work, like, when I saw elements of our culture, when I saw our people, when I saw how people had so many misconceptions of what a woman rapper was supposed to be, and that I wasn't dressed, that I wasn't half naked, or that I wasn't rude, or that I had all these like strange assumptions that, everybody lived in the jungle and everybody had a line. Like, like people said these things to me, that I wasn't the arrogant American. That was important to me, that work. I was like, well, wow. So a few things came up for me. I'm like, man, our culture, this thing that we birthed, me and hip hop around the same age. It was like I was a little kid when I saw hip hop happening. I remember you could only hear it on the radio at night, and you could only hear a few songs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I remember when BET started playing hip hop videos, but I remember when MTV played Run DMC's Walk This Way. Yeah, I remember that. Like, I remember, you know what I'm saying? Like, so as a kid seeing like, wow, they thought it was a joke. And now here it is. I'm like in Iraq. And it's these kids who learn how to speak English because they've been listening to Pac. It's these kids who have a deeper, the kids in Detroit at the time, if I said Jay Dilla, they'd be like, who? But when I was in all these other places, when I went to these different places in the world and I said these names, it was like they stood up, they revered it. Like they honored it, they cherished it. And I was like, wow, so how much more of this is happening around the world? How much of a responsibility do I have to be, to preserve it and to be a keeper of it because of who I am,
so
and that not being usurped and that not being taken over.
What year did you start?
2013.
And you've been doing it since then.
Yeah.
So you've traveled. You've probably forgotten how many places you've traveled at this point, probably.
Man, to date, the number I know now, I'm at 17 countries. But
when you go to a country, I'm assuming you go to multiple places.
Yeah, yes.
So that's what I mean by like you don't even remember.
I know. So the one remarkable moment for me. So I remember I was like I was in AT&T and the sauna, and I would go and I would cry. I had an opportunity to do an ambassadorship in Brazil. I was in Sao Paulo, and I was in the sauna, and I said, "Ooh, remember when you were in the sauna at AT&T crying, and now you're like in a sauna in Sao Paulo about to rap for like 300 people. Like, how's that feel?" You know what I mean? Like, so just, I don't know, just Brazil, Finland, Madagascar, Nepal, Rwanda, Botswana, Ethiopia, Sudan, Iraq, Israel. Just came back from Israel. So many places. I don't know.
And you've also gone with some Detroit musicians
That's right.
too.
Yes.
What is it like just being able to call up a musician like, hey, we about to go to Africa for 3 weeks?
First, so it's really funny. Like
And it's like, do you got your passport?
Exactly. You got your passport. Let's get it together. So for Israel, it was so awesome. I do stuff. I love Brandon Williams. I just as a human, he's a beautiful human. He's good people. We always laugh. He's always good people, but he's always about his business. I had an MD who said they was going to do it out in New York. They got an opportunity to go do something with like Fred Hammond. It was like this big thing. He's like, I can't do it. And I was like,
no weapon formed against
right? So I was like, that's what we're doing right now. So it's literally 3 weeks before we're supposed to go on the road. So I text Brandon, desperate. I was like, Brandon, I'm going to Israel. I need to know if you could come and be my MD today.
Yeah.
Right? And so he's just like, well, let me talk to my family and let me see. But he agreed. He said yes. And it was like awesome. I mean, I've gotten to go with like DJ Invisible. And it's so awesome to see him now really kind of step into that. He's been doing tremendous work as an ambassador. I know one time they asked me about strings. So Halim Strings has been able to do a lot of work. De-Essence has done work. Corona, I think, has done work with Next Level. So it's been awesome to just see us get these opportunities, and we deserve them because we're brilliant.
So, and now with that, I've also noticed that other things have changed too. Like obviously, you're not in the soil any longer, and you got the little homie. It's so much stuff, marriage, everything. But I've also noticed like the branding as far as like with video, style. It seems your package seems to be a whole lot more like top to bottom, like really well thought out.
Yeah.
And just as a marketing person, you know, we always applaud anytime we see an artist
level up,
like
figure it out.
Well, no, not even that as much as like sometimes I just always like to look at it like an anamorphism. Like if this could come to life, you know, like if your music were to go to a coffee shop, what would it order? You know what I'm saying? What clothes would it wear? Where would it go? Like when it seems like it's the pieces put together, I feel like the whole theme kind of comes together a whole lot more. Like, you know, and back to conditioning, I'm from that era. So I remember, you know, my favorite projects, it feels like a whole
cohesive.
Like it feels like from top to bottom, everything about this is going to like connect. You know, and your project, like, you know, the videos, the style, what has impacted that? Because I've noticed it. Like, are you working with new people? Are you just more intentional about the looks and the photography, the videos, the music, like everything? So
shout out to Detroit again, because my videographer for the past 2 music videos that we put out that I think have been some of our best work visually have been Diego Cruz, and so he's been doing a thing. He's been putting it down, so I'm really excited. And he does stuff for like so many people, which again speaks to the heart of Detroit. I mean, he's done stuff for Kodak. He just did something for like for Cash Doll. You know what I mean? I met him through me and Valid had a song. And he was directing the video that we had together. Real humble, real cool. And I just approached him. I'm like, yo, we have this. You know, my husband and I were doing this. Would you be open? So wait, no, I got to take it back. I had shot a video. I can't even say this the right way because you never know who watching. I shot a video, and the video needed some help. Let's just say that. I was like, man, we need an editor. So I'm going crazy trying to find who I can get. I reach out to Diego. He edits the video for me. He's like, I really would love to like work with you, but we gonna work this out. So he hooked us up on that. But then when it was time to do a video, he was the first person I thought of, and he was totally open to doing it, and he's incredible. But I have to credit the growth and the change. I mean, to definitely personal growth. But my husband is a brilliant man. Dre Marshall, super dope. He is a music publisher initially. We met as artists at first. So he's a songwriter. He's a rapper. He's producer. He wasn't really a producer until my project. So he's like, man, you need beats. We need it to be a certain level. We got to do some things. I'm gonna start producing. And so he
basically
figured it out.
That partnership, and this is one of those weird things too, because I'm guessing you probably with his work too. Like when we say with creatives, like a chef in the kitchen, like the chef. If you eat the chef's food at the chef's house, it's probably all types of critiques you can make. But then that chef could come to your kitchen and be like, hey, you need a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Like almost like now that your husband is in that mix with you, he can see some angles that you may kind of know but not really be paying so much attention to, and vice versa, I'm guessing too.
I mean, so for me, like, I think because of the friendship, you know, it's just like Ron Lee and I didn't know, you know, we didn't just, it was like we were friends. We were friends for a really long time. And I think because I was new in my process, he handled me or coddled me a certain kind of way. And my husband, you know, working with people who had Grammys, he himself being a Grammy recipient, he himself taking a certain approach to music, you know, I came with, okay, sit, listen to my verse, help. Okay, what do you think about this line? Okay, well, what do you think about that? He's like, hey, you the rapper, you the writer. Go by yourself, figure it out, bring it back to me done, and then we'll discuss. But go do your job. Like, you're a
I like that.
professional. You do this. So, like, you don't need me to hold your hand or be in the room with you because you're writing everything by yourself anyway. So what, I got to sit here with you while you write this and process this out? No, go do what you need to do. And it's like, oh, you struggle with hooks. You don't get better with hooks until you do more hooks. So my husband saw, and he always gets on me because he's like, I see in you what you don't always see. He's like, you are a force to be reckoned with, and you have to deal with yourself that way, and I'm going to deal with you that way, and I'm not going to baby you, and I'm not going to coddle you, and yeah, I'm your husband, but right now I'm your producer, and right now I'm your label head, and we got to get this done. So he adds a certain he is definitely a visionary, but I'm a, like, even this event that's happening soon, I'm the type of person where it's like I can see the bigger picture. I'm super macro. I'm not micro. I don't want to be bothered with details. It's going to happen how it happens. It's going to be a mess putting it together. But when it's finished, the kitchen's going to be messy, but the food's going to be good. And that's how I am. And he's like, no, the food can be good. And the kitchen can also be kept clean. And that's how he's at home too. Right? It's like, no, we're going to make the meal, but it's a process and a way that things have to be done. And that's how he is in approaching how we do music together too.
I like that you said that, because sometimes just being a creative, and entrepreneurship is creativity too, where we can end up like where we feel like we're just grasping for straws all the time. Hence, that's why I think sometimes, I know I've been in this space, I think all artists, it just seems a little bit more scattered. And that's really, it's like right now, just everything I've seen you've been working on for the past 3-4 years seems to be so like almost in the same direction. Almost the difference for people to understand, almost like, what's an example? What's a great example? Okay. When you think about the catalog of movies that Denzel Washington picks, you feel as though you kind of know what the Denzel Washington character is going to be before it, which I guess sometimes people may say be good or bad, but it fits into a mold. So it makes it like the receiving, back to the conditioning and the marketing, you receive it differently. Beyonce is very intentional about the elegance of her brand in everything associated in that beehive and stuff like that. Whereas sometimes artists just seem, if it just seems too nuanced and all over the place, it's harder to like think of like, where do I even put this? And now that's where I'm just, it's unique seeing that side, and then like you guys working together. What do you think that sharing that creative space, what's it like to share in that creative space in a relationship? And how do you make that,
how do we make it work?
I mean, when do you turn on the creativity and turn on the like, what's the
it's a dance, and it's funny, me and Ron, we were just talking about the idea that, working together and being partners, it's a very delicate dance, you know what I'm saying? It's not always a pretty one, right? Because there's certain things that you need to get done as a business that don't always feel tender. But the tenderness comes when the excellence is executed. And it's done well. And it's like, man, we get to enjoy this now. We get to approach this a certain way. So, our approaches are very different. A lot of times we knucking, we booking. No, I mean, nothing crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're friends. We are where we are because we were initially friends. It's real. And so it takes, for me, I'm very headstrong and he's very headstrong. And it's like, well, what? But when I yield, and I'm like, okay, I trust you. I'm going to listen more. I'm working on I listen more. That's my mantra. The results are incredible. And so, it's
so with that all being said, what's on the new project? Tell me a little bit about that. And we're going to wrap up.
New project is called Better. We have a feature from just incredible artist, vocalist, Aunt Belle, along with my husband, was one of the producers for one of my favorite songs, You Got This. Dre produced 80% of the album, which is incredible because, again, his bend wasn't to produce. So I'm very proud of him. His partner, TJ, was a part of creating like the sound. He has a few tracks on it too. Malcolm Bryant has a track on it. Tiffany Goucher is one of the features, which I love. She's an incredible soul artist. Macklin Dion, few other people. It's just a dope album. My favorite song on it is called Go, and it gives you kind of like a jit, like hip hop, like jit meets hip hop meets like some Chicago footwork. It's a really fun song. It's super fun. But it's a great project. I think sonically it goes through different things, right? So it's like this like really fun turned up half, and I think I take some risks sonically on it, and then I just get back to my roots, and I definitely you feel the soul, you feel the heartfelt in it, and it really is about growth. It's about being better and what it's going to take to get to better.
So how do people get it? How do people connect to your music?
On all social, on all digital platforms, it's available. And get at me at Mahogany Jones. Yes, the real Mahogany Jones. We had to change it because it wasn't the same everywhere. So now on Instagram, it's the real Mahogany Jones. And yeah.
All right. Now we're going to close with one of our favorites, Piper. Tell the story when you met Piper. You know we love Piper here. Detroit is different. Tell the story when you first met Piper and what was that energy like?
Oh my God!
Talk about meeting a Detroiter. That's one to meet.
Man, okay. So I had, people may not know or they may know like my roots are like considered like as a Christian hip hop artist. I had made the decision like, man, I want to branch. I want to be more than that. I want to move beyond. Ill has started with Miss Corona doing this open mic for women. And she hit me up. I got a text about it. It might have been 2011, 2010. Got this text. So in my mind, I'm all nervous. I'm like building on my courage. Like, I'm going to go to this thing. It's going to be fire. I'm nervous. I get there. I see this just beautiful woman with like all this hair just out and, just giving, she's just all this beautiful energy. She's just amazing. And her uncle was there. Her uncle or somebody was there. And he comes up to me. He's like, yeah. He's like, you seem like good people. He's like, I need you to look out for her. And I'm like, me? Look out for her? She's amazing. What do I have to do? He's like, you look out for my Piper. So I'm like, okay. And then she's telling me about the event. She's like, man, we just need hands on deck. This is a movement. Like, it's very important. Like, we want to do something where it's like non-misogynistic hip hop. And we want to do it regularly. We're starting this, this community space where people can come. It's called the Foundation. And the community can come and get resources. And, it's not just like music, but it's also like education. And she just breathed life into what I knew when I was in New York. Wow. And people were artists and people were activists and people cared about the community. She reminded me that there was community in Detroit, in the hip hop scene. Because other than that, what's that, the Bullfrog?
Yeah.
So I had been to dope spoken word spaces when it had come to hip hop. But mind you, like I said, I'm coming from New York Post Cafe. I'm coming from Brooklyn Moon. I'm coming from Wetlands. I'm coming from SOBs. So from that to the Bullfrog to, the whole like 8 Mile battle energy, it's like scary.
Yeah.
It's real scary. It's like, man, I'm trying to help some people out. Like, I want to get shot. Yeah. Like, where's this version of hip hop at? And when I met her, it was like,
So I love that story. And so people can get the context. It's as Mahogany's. It's a lot of women that love hip hop, but hip hop culture, and this is the other thing that I had to learn as I grew older. Hip hop culture itself doesn't lend itself to probably like to a lot of women being in the hip hop spaces unless it's like extremely popular hip hop. Meaning like if you're a quote unquote underground artist, if you're a non I guess industry artist or act, the hip hop spaces are usually like people's girlfriends or sisters or something. But to be that woman just in the space to check out a hip hop show, it's rare.
It's
like they're going to they probably gonna invite their boyfriend and their boyfriend's homeboy to go to the show.
Who got the gat?
So
Unless you like Redbone.
yeah, because so Piper wanted to create a space where you didn't have to be. And Redbone been down so long, and people know who our brother is. And you probably don't want no smoke.
You don't want no smoke.
Either. But that was what the functionality of the foundation night was like. That was where it was sold to me, and I was like, that makes sense because you just know. Going to most hip hop shows, it was just already a known fact that if it's 60 people here, it's going to be 55 men and 5 women.
Yes.
And that may be including the bartender.
And it was crazy, though, because even though we wanted to create this space where we thought it was going to be mainly women, it was mainly men.
Yes.
But when I look back, that's exactly what it was supposed to be. Because in order to change the idea of misogyny, how can you do it without it changing in men? And we saw that. We saw that happen. We saw people become more tolerable, and we became more tolerable. I think we were very militant in our approach, and I think that the more time we got to spend together as men, as women in hip hop, we came to middle spaces, and we came to more agreeable spaces and more spaces where we met in the middle and not. I think at first it was very.
What you doing here? Yeah.
What? And it became this.
And then with the mesh, because I'm going to say this too, even for me included, like Foundation Night, even though we were producing shows at the Bullfrog still, it would be cool because I knew, like, just as a person growing older, some of hip hop culture is anti-old person.
Yes.
So it's like, I might have to stay up. It's like, okay, that means I got to pull up at the spot at 11:30. The show probably not going to start till 12:30. If I want to perform, I'm probably going to be on stage at 1:15. They're going to be outside drinking. I don't smoke weed, but the weed smoking section going to be going till like 2:33. Like, the hip-hop experience is like almost like a midnight to 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I got shit to do. You know what I'm saying?
I'm grown now.
Whereas you could go to Foundation Night and that's wrapped up like
at 11,
by
midnight, 11 midnight.
Yeah, so it's like, I can get home, I can go to sleep. It actually
and be functional
on time. Yeah, exactly. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna get caught with, hey, give me a ride to, where I'm driving somebody all the way to Brightmoor and they ain't gotta come back to the crib. It's like, man, I ain't got time for this. So even for me, it was included because that's another thing, like some of the nuances of hip hop culture as
it could be not inclusive. Yes.
It just it is other stuff that just already comes to mind when I think of the rap show and the underground rap show experience, where it's like, I just have to set my mind up the same way when people say the club. Like, it's not nightclubs, it's nightclub culture.
Yeah.
And unless you're ready for nightclub culture.
Black revolutionaries, distillery owners, Italian fashion retailers, and Motown Grammy winners all share their best stories never before told in any other media outlets on Detroit is Different. Visit DetroitisDifferent.com or download the Detroit is Different app on Apple's App Store or Google's Play Store.